Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Jason Blake here, who plays a guitar called a Warr guitar.
That is correct.
All right, I have to ask you, is that a phalanx?
Actually, no, I play the 12-string version. So the phalanx is a 14-string.
Oh, okay.
And typically those are tuned all the same. So both sides are tuned the same. So I play with where the guitar side, the melody side is in fourths, and the bass side is tuned backwards in fifths. So it's going out. So this is one of those ones where you see the thickest strings in the middle of the instrument, and then it fans out. That's what I'm playing, is the 12-string version. So I have an artisan, an artist. Those are the electric and the acoustic versions of that same instrument.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
From a musical standpoint, I've been playing music my whole life, but I started on piano. My parents got me into music at an early age. I moved to bass pretty early on. In fact, I played upright bass and electric bass, and started doing the tapping thing on bass. So looking at guys like Stu Hamm and Billy Sheehan, I was really loving what they were doing. And one day I was playing and somebody said, there's an instrument completely designed for what it is you're doing there. It's called a Chapman stick. So I got turned on to the Chapman stick, bought one. Actually, I started with the 8-string version, thinking I was just going to inch my way into it. And started with the 8-string. It was called a stick bass, and then fell in love with it. Got the grand stick, which I still own that one. And then from there moved into Warr guitar, which is very similar to a Chapman stick in the sense that it's got the 12 strings and it's tuned the same way. But there was something about the Warr guitar that just appealed to me more, the sound, the tonality of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I came into it. So the piano ended up serving well, because the piano, it's essentially almost like a piano on a guitar neck, because you're tapping everything like you would play a piano. And I came at it from the bass angle because I was doing the tapping like that. So it just seemed to be the instrument that I was meant to play. Just didn't find it until a little later on.
Now, I have to say, for an album that's all instrumental, you do something that a lot of people probably find hard to do, which is to tell a story without singing. And you kind of have a story behind the album, and I guess if you could explain it to everyone.
Yeah, so one of the things that when I'm writing this material, I find it easier to establish a storyline or come up with something at least to guide where I want the music to go. Because otherwise, you could just write arbitrary music, but I like to have a flow and a sense of purpose for everything. So one of the things I do is I like to create a storyline first, which gives me that sort of roadmap to figure out where it is I want to take the music.
Mm-hmm.
For this one in particular, I just keep seeing more and more of this idea of screens being the all-encompassing thing in children's lives. And it started this idea I had, and then I don't know where the idea of the Pied Piper came along, but I was reading the actual story at some point, and everybody's kind of heard of it, but when I actually read the story, I started making all sorts of modern connotations to the idea of this guy coming in and leading the rats out of the city, and then eventually leading the children out. And it just made me think, there's a lot of correlations between what the Pied Piper was doing and what technology is doing, in a different sense, but just leading children blindly away from family, away from, comfort, and taking them elsewhere. And I got going with that idea, and then it just kept building and building. And then I came up with the idea to what if I put this that's the storyline. And so then the music became kind of my soundtrack to this idea of a modern retelling of the Pied Piper.
The social media, for what I do, it's almost like you have to be on it to promote what you're doing.
Right.
But I'll be honest, man. I got so sick of it. I stepped away from it for like a month and a half, and I just posted a video 2 days ago, and I said I was gonna keep putting up my content, but I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time with the whole social media thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you're trying to do something in the public eye, it becomes this necessary evil. It's I can't figure out how to avoid it. There's a
Hmm.
part of me that wishes I could, because again, yeah, I don't enjoy that aspect of things. And it kind of goes against what I'm trying to say with this album even.
Hmm.
Um, but that's about the extent of what I do use it for. Is just it is a useful tool. It's hard for me to completely condemn all these things, because at the end of the day, I do use them to a certain extent.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's also a fine line, and I think this was really more my point of the album, is children. I think they're, children now. I see these kids at restaurants. They're it's taken the place of a pacifier, really.
Yeah.
Put the screen in front of the kid, and that's how I'll keep them quiet at this restaurant. And it's just, I think that's where I'm seeing the more of the issue than, the adult that has to promote their business and get on social media. I get that. That's a part of running a business, for that matter. But some of these young kids that are started so early, and then I see these high schoolers that don't even look up. I walked down the street of Chicago once and counted how many people were actually looking where they were walking versus had their heads down at the phone. And I stopped at 50 and only found 4 people that were looking at where they were walking. Everybody just walks with their phone in their hand, looking down at their phone. It's amazing how connected we've become to these things, where we now don't even look around to see where you're walking. It's a little
Well,
sad.
that whole algorithm thing, I still don't understand it, but I was told you have to post about the same time every day and you do this, that, and the other. And I'm sorry, it's almost enslaving.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And to me, it just, there's a little part of it that just doesn't, there's no rhyme or reason to it either. So I never even heard that same time, same day. Maybe I'll start doing that. It just seems like you just never know. One day it's this, one day it's that. I don't get it.
I don't get the rules on it, but and another thing is that it's like we're bringing up a generation that doesn't know how to communicate and have real human interaction. Everything is on a screen. I know people that they'll be in the same room, but they'll still text each other.
Yeah.
I was like, you're sitting right there.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. Go to a restaurant sometimes and watch couples sit there, or watch families sit there and eat. And it's embarrassing, really, that a couple will be sitting there and they're both on their phone, not paying attention to each other, or a family will all be on their phone. And it's like that whole concept of just communication, time spent with each other, the
Hmm.
socialization. I do fear for what happens when an entire generation has not had the same socialization as we would have had as kids. Now, what happens in the future? And again, that kind of comes back to what this idea of this album is like, uh, if you've never had a purpose to go and speak in person and communicate with people, and all your communication has been via texting or Snapchatting or whatever it is, I just don't know how that serves you well in the future.
I don't know, but one thing I can say, my wife, she has a strict rule when we have our meals together, the
Mm.
phones get turned off and you pay attention to each other.
Yeah, it's
That's
important.
yeah.
We have to, and we have to go back. And I do hope that there's some form of kind of reversal back to that, things. I've noticed so many things that, they always refer to the pendulum and how it swings back. I do hope that stuff like this does kind of swing back to a little bit more of a form of normalcy where the family dinner becomes a thing again. And
Mhm.
it seems like everybody's so busy that, one kid's at this sport, one kid's at that sport. Nobody's sitting down at the table at the same time. And when they do, they've got a million things going on. This is a hypothetical family I'm going to talk about, but dad's on the phone because he's got business still going on. Kids have friends texting them. It just seems like that's what's becoming more and more what's happening. So,
Well, there's a few songs that I'll listen to that will actually bring a tear to my eye. And because I'm a very sentimental person, and I think, my kids are all older. I mean, my youngest is 25, the oldest one's 30. My daughters have their own children now, and that you'll never get that time back. And
yeah.
I'll hear a song like Cats in the Cradle.
I was just going to say, I knew what you were going to say because it does the same thing for me. Boy, when you follow the lyrics of that song, that's a hard one to listen to when you get a little older and you start to read and it starts to make sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that one because I feel the exact same way about that song.
It chokes me up every time. I mean, I didn't spend any time with my dad except for when I worked for him during the summers. And even then, I was working and he was off somewhere else doing his job. So you never get that time back. And I'm not going to make that same mistake with my grandkids.
Mhm.
Now, do you have a website?
I do. JasonBlakeMusic.com. The band is at AziolaCry.com. Nobody knows how to spell Aziola. It's AZIOLACRY.com. But my site is a good place to go to send you off in the right direction of either it be the record label, which is 7D. That's Trey Gunn from King Crimson's record label. That's who put out this album. Or my social media stuff is all kind of connected to that as well. So where to buy the album, all that kind of stuff is there. So it's a good hub to go, and Jason Blake Music.
Well, I'm going to put those links in the description to make it easy for folks to find it, and say the album be coming out on the 17th of March. And
Yeah, week and a half now.
yeah, it's getting pretty close. And before we end, do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to pass on to the audience
In general or music related?
in general?
Well, actually, I'm going to say something that relates to both of them.
Okay.
Because I do believe it's just a general sense of what I've come to find out in life, and it really pertains to the music thing, is that I think persistence is the key. I think that especially now, I see a lot of kids being lazy in the sense of if they don't do something very well, they quit. And to a certain degree, I was somewhat that. It was a kid. If I was good at it, I liked it and I might pursue it. If I wasn't, I didn't pursue it very heavily or I had no interest in it. And I found through the music and I found through just things in general life as well, the more you stick with something, the better off you are and the more return you get ultimately. So I think when it comes to like the music thing, I think a lot of people are real quick to give up easily because it's a very difficult business to get into from the sense of like you're going to get knocked down more than you're going to be praised for anything. And so but sticking with it, you get that little foot in the door that turns to this, that turns to that, and it's amazing what kind of happens as a result of that. And I think that applies to life in general, just, whether it be your job or anything, that the more you stick with things and the more you keep at it, I think it does. Reward is there for those that work hard and try to achieve something through that persistence. So I've learned that. I hope that more people kind of pick up on that. Is I think we just as in general, especially with the short attention spans we now have and things like that, I think we don't have that see-through that we should.
Yeah, they're not lying. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for spending your time with me today and with the audience. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I highly recommend this album. I enjoyed every moment of it, and I will be jamming to it this weekend when I'm barbecuing. So
Nice. I
and
appreciate that.
oh man, my pleasure. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, please come back, hit that subscribe button for my usuals. And you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.